It's Friday, March 21st, 2025.
Mm,
And you know that feeling, right? When you just sense there's a huge story about to break, like any minute now, we're all going to be glued to our feeds.
yeah.
Well, for India today, that story is delimitation, like redrawing the whole parliamentary map. And let me tell you, this is way more gripping than any dry government document. It's straight up political trauma, high stakes, you know.
Right from the get-go, the chief minister of Tamil Nadu, MK Stalin, he throws down the gauntlet, calling this emergency meeting for tomorrow.
Yeah, no time to waste, huh?
Not at all. He's really dialing up the urgency here, and it signals how seriously he's taken this.
No kidding. He's not holding back either. I mean, he's calling this whole delimitation thing a direct hit, like right at the foundation of Indian federalism.
And, just so everyone's clear, federalism, it's all about how power gets divvied up, right? Between those individual states and the big central government, it's a careful balancing act.
Yeah, for sure. It's that whole idea of shared power. And Stalin's basically saying this throws that balance way out of whack.
And I think the root of his worry is how this delimitation thing actually plays out. It boils down to redrawing those lines for parliamentary constituencies based on, well, how many people live where. So picture it like you've got a pie, right? And you're slicing it up based on how big each state's population is.
Okay, I'm with
The bigger the population, the bigger the slice of pie, and that translates directly to more seats in parliament. So, big states like Uttar Pradesh, they could end up with a whole lot more clout, while states that have actually been managing their population growth,
like Tamil Nadu.
exactly, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, they could see their slice shrinking, which, as you can imagine, is causing some anxiety.
It becomes a pure numbers game, right? And the concern, especially down south, is that the rules as they stand are basically rigged in favor of those more populous northern states. And Stalin's not just talking about this, he's actually bringing people together. So for this meeting tomorrow, we're talking the chief ministers of, get this, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, Telangana, Odisha, West Bengal, Punjab. That's a whole lot of states that aren't exactly in the BJP's pocket.
Quite a coalition forming there, but you know what's interesting? No Mamata Banerjee on that list.
Oh, you're right. West Bengal's a big player in all this.
Huge. So I gotta wonder, is she just busy or is there something more strategic going on? Either way, this meeting definitely shows a real push to join forces and figure out a response.
And this isn't just about delimitation, is it? This feels like it could be the shot in the arm that the India alliance needs. That whole bunch of opposition parties trying to mount a serious challenge to the BJP.
Absolutely. Delimitation could be the glue that finally brings them all together.
It's that common enemy, right? Makes them realize they got to work together.
Precisely. And, when you really step back and look at the big picture, that's where Stalin's stance really hits home. He's not just worried about some lines shifting on a map. It's about this deep fear that the whole power structure in India, that balance, could be permanently altered.
Yeah, those comments he made about eroding democracy, voices getting silenced, rights being compromised, it's heavy stuff.
No doubt he's attaching immense weight to this issue.
And the real kicker here, the crux of it all, is how parliamentary seats get bowled out right now. It's all about the population size, and the potential changes on the table are pretty dramatic. We're looking at projections that say Uttar Pradesh could snag something like 128 extra seats.
Wow.
Bihar could gain around 70. And then you flip that, you look at Tamil Nadu possibly getting next to nothing, maybe even losing seats. And suddenly, those alarm bells Stalin's ringing make total sense. It's like some states are getting this built-in advantage just because they've got more people.
Makes you think about fairness, doesn't it? Stalin's argument is, look, states like Tamil Nadu, they've actually been responsible. They've put in work to manage population. They've got strong economies, good governance. Why should they get punished for that?
Yeah, they're being penalized for doing what's arguably good for the country as a whole, and they're definitely not letting it slide. Remember that whole thing in Parliament a while back? The DMK MPs rocking up in those bright red and blue T-shirts.
Oh yeah, hashtag fair delimitation. Tamil Nadu will fight. Tamil Nadu will win. Hard to miss those.
It was a statement, that's for sure.
And the reaction, Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla, Rajya Sabha Chairman Jagdeep Dhankhar, they had to adjourn both houses because of the dress code. Ironic, isn't it? Parliament gets shut down by T-shirts.
Yeah, but hey, at least it got everyone's attention.
No doubt about that. The DMK made their point loud and clear. They're not messing around.
To really grasp how big this is, it helps to zoom out a bit and look at how delimitation's gone down in India historically. You've got these exercises in 1952, 1963, 1973, and then again in 2002.
Yeah, every time the goal is the same, tweak those constituency boundaries to match the latest population figures.
Right, keeping things kind of proportional. But there's this one period that's super interesting, right? During the emergency.
Indira Gandhi's government, they put a hard stop to the whole seat allocation thing with that 42nd Amendment. Their logic was, We can't punish states that are doing well with family planning, or else everyone's going to be incentivized to just let their populations explode.
Smart, right? It acknowledges that this whole thing can backfire if doing the right thing actually costs you political power.
Exactly. And that freeze, it stuck around until after the 2001 census. And what's interesting is that 2002 delimitation, it didn't change the total number of Lok Sama seats.
It just redrew the lines.
Yep, focused on those boundaries. And back then, the southern states, Tamil Nadu included, they were pushing hard to keep that freeze going.
Which brings us to why we're having this whole conversation now. It feels like it was really kicked off by what Union Home Minister Amit Shah said after those 2024 elections. He hinted that this census coming up and the delimitation that follows, that's going to be a whole new ballgame.
Like they're moving away from that old freeze.
Yeah, and that's what's got everyone on edge. And Stalin's come up with his own solution. He's saying, use the 1971 census as the basis for doling out those seats and lock it in for another 30 years after 2026.
1971, that's an interesting choice. Why go back that far?
Well, the idea is, back then the population difference between North and South wasn't nearly as big as it is now. So if you use that as the benchmark, you essentially protect the South's current representation.
Makes sense.
Especially when you consider India's population is on track to hit something like 1.42 billion by 2026. I mean, that's a lot of people. If you just base seats purely on those numbers, you're going to end up with a whole bunch of new seats in the Lok Sabha.
And guess where most of them would go?
Exactly. The states with the highest population growth, not exactly a recipe for balanced representation. And Stalin's not sitting on his hands. He's been reaching out to all these other chief ministers, trying to build a coalition, shared concern, safety in numbers.
Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala.
Yep, those guys, Telangana, Odisha, West Bengal, Punjab. He's casting a wide net, but there's a catch.
What's that?
Well, you've got guys like Chandrababu Naidu in Andhra Pradesh. He's a BJP ally. And Odisha's got a BJP government. They might not be so keen on teaming up with Stalin on this one.
Yeah, those political alliances definitely throw a wrench in the works. But still, it's pretty telling that the DMK has been working this angle hard, even during that recent budget session.
Ministers, MPs, they've been talking to everyone, trying to drum up support. They know this is a big deal.
And Stalin himself is really hammering that home, calling this a defining moment, the beginning of a movement. He's not holding back on the dramatic language.
Yeah, it's clear he sees this as a potential turning point, and it's not just happening in isolation. You've got Mamata Banerjee up to West Bengal. She's got her own beef with the BJP and the Election Commission about voter rolls.
So there's this wider sense of unrest, right? Like all these opposition forces are starting to stir.
It feels like things are building to something.
It really forces us to think, in a country as big and diverse and fast-growing as India, what does fair representation even mean? If you just hand more power to states based on population and those states that are doing well in other ways get sidelined, is that really the best way forward? Is that what's good for the whole country?
Big questions, and they're not easy to answer. So all eyes are on that meeting tomorrow. Will those opposition leaders manage to present a united front? Will Stalin's idea of using the 1971 census gain any traction? No one knows for sure.
But one thing's for certain, this isn't just about redrawing some lines on a map. It's a battle over power, fairness, and the whole future of India's federal structure.
Yeah, the decisions made about delimitation, they're going to have ripple effects for decades to come. This is about shaping the India of tomorrow. So as you're listening to this, as you go about your day, think about it. What does fair representation mean to you? How should we be allocating power in a country like India? It's a complex issue, lots of nuances, but it's a conversation we all need to be having, especially as this whole thing plays out.
Absolutely.
And who knows what twists and turns are still to come.
Plenty, I'm sure.
But one thing's for sure, we'll be right here diving deep and keeping you informed every step of the way.
Till next time, then.
See ya.
Take care.